Our Lenten series of sermons takes us to an area of life where the church has been strangely hesitant to say anything at all. Before us this morning is the subject of divorce and how Christian people might respond to the reality of divorce in our world. But before we really dig into it all, let's clear a few things up. Pollster Lewis Harris writes, "The idea that half of American marriages are doomed is one of the most specious pieces of statistical nonsense ever perpetuated in modern times." It all began when the Census Bureau noticed one year that there were 2.4 million marriages and 1.2 million divorces. Now, someone did the math without calculating the fact that there are 54 million marriages already in existence, and presto, a ridiculous but quotable and highly political statistic was born. Harris concludes, only 1 out of 8 marriages will end in divorce in any single year. Only about 2% of existing marriages will break up. According to the National Vital Statistics Systems of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, from 2000 to 2007, the divorce rate in the United States actually declined. Now, you won't hear those kind of statistics from those who would like to have you believe that divorce is as prevalent today as the common cold, but there they are. However, the simple truth is that if you are part of a divorcing couple, or if you are going through a relationship that is breaking up, statistics don't mean much at all. When you are going through the dissolution of a marriage or a relationship, what is happening with the rest of the world really doesn't seem to matter. You are going through a dry season, a time when life is chaotic and confused. Nothing seems to make much sense. Dreams are dashed to pieces. For those of us who have traveled through those tumultuous times, we discover that the stages of moving through divorce are not unlike those surrounding death and dying that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified over 30 years ago. For the person moving through divorce, there seems to be 3 main stages. Stage 1 is shock and denial, quickly followed by anger and sadness. And then stage 2 comes along, sometimes called the adjustment period, as you begin to reform and recreate your life. And then stage 3 comes along, sometimes called the ending stage, as you begin to actually live that new life. There's no set time period or length of time that you have to spend moving from one stage to another. Some people take only a few months, others it can last for a year or 2 or more. But there is some comfort in knowing that we can systematically move through these fairly predictable stages as we move from brokenness toward wholeness. Of course, during that dry season, when love fails, we feel a host of feelings that can change at less than a moment's notice. We live in that strange mix of sadness and anger. We feel guilt and shame. We feel embarrassment and failure. We feel loneliness and isolation. The dust storm of emotions is profound. When some of God's children go through the dry season of divorce and the demise of relationships, what happens? Far too many of them find themselves terribly alone, even alone in the midst of their church family. Far too many churches and church people still don't really know what to do when divorce comes to one of their own. Some churches cannot simply accommodate divorce in any way, and they separate the divorce from the rest of the baptized members, refusing them participation in the sacraments of that church. Other churches label the divorced as sinners, which only furthers the guilt and shame and loss of self-esteem that too often travels with divorce. Still, other churches don't know what to do and end up doing nothing at all. We in the church don't really even know what to say. It's not unlike when we find ourselves in the presence of death. What is the right thing to say? We try to say the right thing and do the right thing, only to discover that we really haven't said or done much of anything that is helpful. Too often, people of faith end up passing judgments of every kind on those who are going through the dry season of divorce. We're a little like those friends of Job who, well-intentioned and well-meaning, nevertheless kept saying and doing the dumbest things. Maybe if you could have had a few more shared interests, I had one person say to another who was going through divorce. No one needs to hear what they might have done when it's too late to do anything at all. He was always like that. I've known him for years, and he's always been that way. A word of comfort was the intention, but the subtle judgment is, if you would have only asked me, I could have told you to stay away from him. How about this one? Well, you could have been nicer. Wow. Or try this one on. Did you really, really try to put things back together? May God spare us from such friends. It's the reminder of the funny, true sentence. Little saying. You know what the number one cause of divorce is? Marriage. All those statements and others of their kind are truly, truly well-intentioned. But when your life is already dried out and is fragile as a shriveled leaf, these kinds of statements only bring more pain, guilt, shame. These kinds of statements produce anger and bitterness, sometimes toward the one from whom we are separating, sometimes from those who are passing the judgment. Jesus knew the destructive power of judgment. When we judge one another, we seem to be saying that we've got it all together while the other has made a mess of things. We see the fault in the other and completely ignore the myriad of faults in our own lives. It's as though we say, from my perfect vantage point, not only my life, but my vantage point on yours, this is what seems to me to be the problem. Why is it that we all turn into Dr. Phil? As if the world needs one more Dr. Phil. Jesus labels this judging thing hypocrisy. Now, we hear that word in a lot of ways, but the word hypocrisy comes from a Greek word that was used in the theater that meant playing a part or putting on a mask. We put on a mask of our own perfection, our own superiority, our own justification, and we present ourselves as something that we are not. As we begin trying to remove the grain of sand